Okay, so those methods we used in video 1, they can only be used when the expression that we have is a perfect square. So when we have an x squared on the left, or a perfect square such as an x plus 3 quantity squared on the left. Okay. However, we can use this skill called completing the square to create a perfect square trinomial, which can then be factored into a perfect square in order to use this method to solve some quadratic equations. Okay. So recall from the Desmos activity that we did in class on Monday that we can use algebra tiles to help us understand completing the square. So maybe what we're given at first is x squared plus 4x. Okay, so I have an x squared and then I have 4 x's here. Okay, if I arrange these as I see them and equally distribute the length and the width, I can fill in or complete this square by adding 4 single tiles. So let's just review this by looking at a couple more examples. Okay, so what I'd like us to do is to draw in the missing squares and write the perfect square trinomial that results in both standard form and factored form. Let me switch pen colors because that green is so close to the actual one. Okay, so I have x squared, and if I fill this in here with squares, oh, this is lots of drawing of squares. I'm noticing though, as I'm drawing these, I've got a 4x4 space that I have to fill in. So I know I'm going to have 16 squares here. So I'll have x squared plus 8x plus 16. If I look at the next one, I already can see that this space I have to fill in is 3x3. So I already know I'm going to need 9 little squares here. So I think I'm going to save myself the work and just write x squared plus 6x plus 9. I'm going to go back and write each of these in factored form because that's what the directions asked me to do. What multiplies to 16 and adds to 8, that would be 4 and 4. So the factored form is x plus 4 quantity squared. What multiplies to 9 and adds to 6, that's 3 x plus 3 quantity squared. Now the big question though is, how can I go from what I'm given? So what I'm given is x squared plus 8x. How can I just go from that expression to figuring out what needs to be added to complete the square? So what is that pattern we have between what we're given and what we add? In the second one, what we're given is 6 x's, okay? And what do we need to add? 9. What is that pattern? Well, that pattern is we have that b term, that 6 or that 9. What we're doing is we're taking half of it because we're equally distributing half on top, half on the bottom, and then we're squaring it, okay? So in order to do this without drawing out a picture, we just take whatever that b term is, we divide it by 2 and square it. So you can look at the example below, okay? It also uses that number 6. Okay, what's half of 6? 3. What's 3 squared? 9. That's what we need to add to complete the square. So let's just try completing a few of these, okay? Just 2 of them it looks like I've got ready for us, okay? So complete the square for each expression and then write it as a binomial squared. So we're going to complete the squared and then factor it. All right, so what we said we had to do is take the b term, in this case it's negative 14. So half of negative 14 equals negative 7. And then when I square negative 7, I get a positive 49. So since my last step is to square, and whether I square positive numbers or negative numbers, my answer is always positive, I don't even have to really worry about the negative piece. I'll always have a positive answer. So x squared minus 14x plus 49. Now remember, the whole point of this was to create a perfect square trinomial. And the way we can check to do if we did it right is we can check, well, what multiplies to 49 and adds to 14? 7 and 7. In this case, it would be -7 and -7. So if you can write it in this factored form as a perfect square trinomial, you know that you completed the square correctly. Let's try another one. All right, my B term is 9. Half of 9 is 4.5. We're going to avoid decimals, okay? So this is a simplified fraction. I guess that's what I've got. Now if I square that, I would get 81 over 4. Okay? All right, let's write that out. X squared plus 9x plus 81 over 4. Okay, now I'm supposed to write this in factored form. So good thing I know that this is a perfect square trinomial, and the shortcut to factoring this is I take the square root of the first term, which is x, and I take the square root of the c term. And because I left it as a fraction, it's real easy for me to know that the square root of 81 over 4 is just 9 over 2. And now I've got it in my factored form. Okay, so we worked on this skill, we practiced it so that we can use it to solve equations, okay? So we're going to complete the square to create a perfect square trinomial, and then we'll use square roots to solve. So we're going to put all of these pieces together that we've been looking at today. So here are the steps, and I'm going to suggest to you that you have these notes available to you as you're doing your homework, because we are going to need to go through all 6 of these steps to complete the problems. And it's a lot of steps. Each one isn't difficult, but we just need to make sure we do all of them. So our first step is to collect the variable terms on one side and the constants on the other. So that means x's on one side, constants on the other. Then, as needed, divide both sides by a to make the coefficient 1. What that means is if I look at this example down here, there is a 3 in front of the x squared. I do not want to deal with that. Remember how much extra work that was from last week? So I am going to check, is 3 a common factor among all of these terms? Yes. So I am going to divide every single term by 3, and then I can rewrite it as x squared minus 8x equals 9. So that's what we mean by as needed, because sometimes you might just have an x squared to start with. Okay. Then we'll complete the square. We'll do what we just did, take half of the b term, square it, and notice we're going to add it to both sides, because this is an equation. We can't add to one side and not the other. We're going to add it to both sides, then we will factor, then we'll take the square root and solve. So let's use these steps to finish this example that we see here. So we're already on step 3. We're going to complete the square. So to complete the square, I ask myself, what is half of 8? 4. What is 4 squared? 16. I'm going to add 16 to both sides. Next step, we're on number 4. Factor it. What multiplies to 16 and adds to -8? -4 and -4. Now it says to take the square root of both sides. Yep, because I have a perfect square on the left, and lucky me, I've got a perfect square on the right. Now we know that that's not necessary to solve, but we know it's a lot easier. So now I'm left with x minus 4 equals plus or minus 5. Solve for the values. So I'm going to now solve for x by adding 4 to each side. X is equal to positive 4 plus or minus 5. And remember, I now need to add them and subtract them. 4 plus 5 is 9. 4 minus 5 is -1. So there we are. We went through all 6 of these steps. It's a lot of steps, but none of them were particularly taxing and difficult. Let's try another one together, and then I'm going to ask you to pause the video, or I'm going to end the video, have you try the last one on your own, and then come back and check your answer. Okay, so let's see if we can remember our steps. First one, collect all of the variable terms on one side, constant terms on the other. Okay, so to do that, what I'm going to need to do is subtract this 12x from each side. So all the x squared minus 12x equals negative 20. Divide by a if needed. Notice there is nothing in front of the x squared, no need to divide. Now I complete the square. I say, what is half of 12? That's 6. What's 6 squared? 36. I'm going to add 36 to both sides of my equation. X squared minus 12x plus 36 equals negative 20 plus 36. Factor it. What multiplies to 36 and adds to negative 12? Negative 6 and negative 6. Good, I have a perfect square trinomial. That's what I was going for. 36 minus 20 is 16. Now I'm at the solving part. I take the square root of each side and I solve for x. X minus 6 is equal to plus or minus 4. X equals 6 plus or minus 4. Add 6 and 4 for 10. Subtract 6 minus 4, and I have 2. Those are my two solutions. Okay, I'm going to stop the video here. I would like you to try this next one on your own, and then come back to video 3 to both check your answer, and we're going to look at one more application of completing the square.